They thought humans fainted at the sight of blood. But then they watched a surgeon slice open a chest, expose a beating heart, and bring someone back from the edge of death. When the Yilthuri arrived on Earth, they came not as conquerors, but as scholars. Their vast, translucent eyes saw across spectrums infrared, ultraviolet, and emotional resonance. To them, blood was terror made visible, the raw signal of death. On their homeworld, when a creature bled, others fled. It was instinct. So when they studied humanity, they began with that assumption. Humans feared blood more than anything. Ambassador Threx of the Yilthuri had spent years cataloging human behavior. They noted the trembling reactions of civilians in violent scenes, the screams in the aftermath of accidents, the panic that spread through crowds at the first sign of red. They are fragile, Threx concluded in one early report. Fear of blood defines their survival instincts. They are a species of avoidance. It seemed a safe conclusion until the day they entered the surgical theater. The invitation came from Dr. Elara Voss, a renowned cardiothoracic surgeon at St. Jude's Hospital. She had heard that the Yilthari were fascinated by human physiology, so she offered to show them something no alien had yet witnessed, the opening of a living human chest. The Yilthuri delegation arrived, dressed in sterile glass suits, refracting light in soft rainbows. Inside, their bodies pulsed like jellyfish hearts, every motion betraying unease. Through their translator units, Threx whispered to Elara, "We were told this procedure is voluntary, and that the subject will survive." Elara smiled behind her mask. "Yes, that's the point." They entered the operating room, a white cathedral of precision. Machines hummed like distant hymns. Nurses moved with choreographed calm, instruments gleaming under surgical lamps. On the table lay a middle-aged man, sedated, his chest bare and marked in blue ink. The Yilthuri huddled near the observation window, trembling as they sensed the first incision. The scalpel parted flesh in one clean stroke. Red welled up instantly. The Yilthuri recoiled, their bioluminescent skin flickering with panic. One of them emitted a sharp chittering sound that meant death imminent. But Dr. Voss didn't panic. She didn't even hesitate. Her voice was level as she gave commands. Clamp, suction, retractor. Her team obeyed with surgical grace. Each motion deliberate, confident, calm. Blood flowed, flesh opened, and yet, life persisted. The Yilthuri couldn't process it. The smell of iron in the air should have triggered retreat. Yet the humans leaned closer. They entered the wound willingly, searching, touching, manipulating the organs of life with godlike control. Threx whispered, horrified and fascinated. "They're not afraid." "No," said the human nurse beside him, smiling faintly behind her mask. "They're saving him." Minutes turned to an hour. The Yilthuri watched the surgeon reach into the patient's open chest and expose the heart itself, pumping, rhythmic, vulnerable. Their senses screamed warnings of mortality, of decay, of sacred biological limits being shattered. But to the humans, it was simply another day. Then something happened that froze every alien in place. The patient's heart stopped. A sharp alarm cut through the silence. The Yilthuri began to tremble violently. "He's dying," Threx cried. "You killed him." Dr. Voss didn't answer. She placed 2 fingers into the cavity and began to massage the heart directly. Her hands were steady, her face calm, her voice steady as she ordered an injection and a shock charge. Electricity arced through the body. Once, twice. Then the heart began to beat again. The Yilthuri fell utterly silent. Threx could only whisper, in a trembling voice, "You command death itself." Elara finally looked up at them through the glass. "No," she said quietly. "We fight it." The Yilthuri left that room changed. What they had seen was not madness, nor savagery, it was mastery. Humanity's courage was not the absence of fear, but the defiance of it. Threx began to understand that day that humans did not fear blood because they had learned to dance with it. The following week, Threx could not rest. Even as the earth rotated beneath a shroud of clouds and traffic lights, their alien mind kept returning to the vision of that open chest. The rhythmic pulse of life defied the strange serenity of those who faced death and smiled. Among the Yilthuri, blood was sacred. It was never to be seen, never to be touched. A wounded Yilthuri was instantly surrounded by mourners, for a single cut meant certain death. Their bioluminescent fluids congealed within seconds, and no one dared to intervene. To them, opening a body was an act of desecration, a tearing of the soul from its vessel. But these humans, they tore themselves open to survive. The contradiction consumed Threx. Their notes became obsessive. They exhibit calm during exposure to death sickness, adrenal output surges. but cognition remained structured. This cannot be instinct. It is discipline ritualized defiance. Driven by curiosity, Threx requested access to more human rituals involving blood. Dr. Voss, intrigued, agreed. Then come, she said one evening, to the Red Cross donation center. Blood without battle. Inside the clinic, volunteers sat in chairs, chatting softly as tubes carried crimson life into plastic bags. Some scrolled through their phones, others laughed with nurses. It was casual, almost cheerful. To Threx it was madness. They are bleeding themselves willingly, they whispered. No coercion, no threat. Exactly, Dr. Voss replied, her tone calm but firm. Each donation can save 3 lives. It's how we help each other. Threx's color shifted to a pale, questioning hue. Help by draining life. Not draining, she said, smiling, sharing. The alien recorded everything, the laughter, the calm pulses of heartbeats, the scent of iron that filled the air like incense. No panic, no flight, just ordinary humans offering their essence for strangers they'd never meet. Later that day, Threx wrote in their report, blood to humans is not fear, it is connection. They have made death's color their symbol of hope. A surgeon's philosophy. That night, in the hospital cafeteria, Dr. Voss and Threx sat together. The hum of machinery echoed faintly through the floors, like distant thunder. Threx finally asked, why do you not fear it? The color, the loss, the sight of your inner workings. Alara looked thoughtful. We do fear it, she said. Every surgeon does. Every soldier, every nurse, every parent who's ever seen someone they love hurt. Fear never goes away. We just refuse to let it stop us. Her eyes met Threx's translucent ones. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the right thing while you're afraid. Threx processed the statement for several seconds. On their planet, such behavior would be seen as suicidal. But here, it was the foundation of civilization. Humans had built their entire world atop this paradox: fragility giving rise to strength. A test of empathy to understand further. Threx volunteered for what Dr. Voss called a simulation. A small incision was made in a synthetic Year 3 suit, a harmless mimic of their own biology. When the red liquid flowed out, Threx's sensors screamed an alarm. Their entire body stiffened. Centuries of instinct told them to run, to seal themselves away. But Alara simply pressed her hand over the leak, steady and gentle. It's all right, she whispered. We stopped the flow first. Then we fixed the wound. For a moment Threx felt something entirely new. Trust. Not the cold assurance of data or logic, but the raw, irrational comfort of another being's presence in danger. It was then that Threx began to suspect that the power humans held wasn't technological, nor biologically was emotional. The ability to remain with suffering rather than flee from it. That night, as the Year 3 shuttle lifted off from the hospital roof, Threx stared down at the lights of the city. The streets pulsed like glowing veins, red and gold and alive. And Threx realized humanity had turned their greatest fear into their greatest symbol, not of death, but of life continuing against all odds. Weeks passed. Threx's fascination with humanity deepened into something perilously close to reverence. They had studied countless intelligent species across the spiral-armed civilizations that built crystal cities, worlds that communicated through light, empires that mastered quantum matter itself. But none behaved like humans. Humans were chaos harnessed by will. They were both predator and protector, destroyer and healer, often in the same heartbeat. The Year 3 Council began to question Threx's objectivity. You grow sentimental, their superior Vela warned through the shimmering holographic channel. Do not mistake madness for bravery. The humans court death with arrogance. Their surgical rituals, their warfare, their reckless exploration of the void, these are not virtues. They are symptoms of a death-addicted species. Threx bowed respectfully but said nothing. Inside, they disagreed, because they had seen something the Council had not: humanity's intimacy with mortality. The Hospital of the Dying. At Dr. Voss's invitation, Threx visited the palliative ward next. There were no scalpels here, no alarms, no struggle against death, only acceptance. Yet even here, humans displayed courage of another kind. Threx watched an old woman with grey eyes hold her granddaughter's hand. The machines beside her beeped softly, fading. She smiled and said, "It's all right, sweetheart. Everyone's time comes. What matters is what we do before it does. No panic, no resistance, just peace." The Yulthari had no equivalent. Death to them was contamination, a spreading shadow that ended all things. To watch a human speak to death as though it were an old companion, it shattered everything Threx had believed about fear. Lessons from the battlefield. Later, through documentary archives. Threx studied human war footage, medics crawling through fire to reach the wounded, surgeons operating under bombardment, soldiers carrying comrades through fields of blood. It was grotesque, yet magnificent. Every instinct screamed flee, yet humanity's finest ran toward the suffering. One clip froze Threx's breath. A combat medic, drenched in red, applied pressure to a wound while whispering, "Stay with me, stay." He was terrified, voice shaking, but he didn't stop. Threx wrote in their journal, "Fear is not humanity's enemy. It is their companion, the ghost that walks beside them, teaching them where courage begins." Dr. Voss's experiment one evening. Dr. Voss proposed an idea. "I think it's time you see what it feels like to save a life," she told Threx. She led them to a laboratory where a synthetic human body lay on a surgical tabula, hyper-realistic training model. Its sensors replicated pulse, breath, and blood flow. "This one's not alive," Ilara said, "but the pressure, timing." Threx hesitated. "I am not built for such acts." "Neither were we, once," she said gently. The operation began. Under her guidance, Threx made the incision. The imitation blood welled up instantly. Even knowing it was synthetic, their instincts rebelled. Every fiber of their being screamed retreat, but Ilara's steady voice anchored them. "Focus. The patient depends on you. Fear can wait. Precision cannot." Step by step, Threx mimicked her movement: suction, clamp, cut. Their trembling steadied. Their vision, once overwhelmed by red, began to see patterns: arteries like rivers, muscle fibers like woven threads of purpose. At last, the artificial heart restarted. The monitors beeped rhythmically. Threx stepped back, stunned. Their translator whispered in awe, "I saved it." Ilara smiled behind her mask. "That's the feeling that changes everything." That night, Threx recorded their most dangerous thought yet. Perhaps evolution did not make humans fearless. Perhaps it made them capable of love so strong that even fear obeys it. The Yield Theory Council would call it heresy, but Threx knew better. For the first time in their species' history, an alien had not only studied humans, they had begun to understand them. The following months transformed Threx from a mere observer into something else entirely, a bridge between two species divided by instinct. They began giving lectures to the Yield Theory Council remotely, presenting their findings not in the cold language of biology, but in the poetic cadence of experience. Still, skepticism ruled the council. "You claim these beings find strength in fear," Vela said, his tone sharp as static. "Yet their history is drenched in blood wars, crimes, violence beyond comprehension. How do you reconcile such savagery with your notion of moral courage?" Threx hesitated before responding. "Because they bleed for reasons, sometimes misguided, sometimes noble, but always with purpose. Even when they destroy, they dream of rebuilding. Even when they lose faith, they fight for meaning." Vela's light dimmed to a cold blue. "Meaning does not justify madness." "No," Threx admitted softly, "but it transforms it." Return to the operating room. Dr. Ilara Voss invited Threx to witness another surgery, this time a heart transplant. Inside the operating theater, the air shimmered with tension and reverence. Two patients were involved, one who had just died, and one whose life still flickered on the edge. Threx watched silently as the donor's heart, still warm, still red, was lifted from one body to another. The Yield Theory could sense the energy, the strange biological hum of continuity. It was as if one rhythm had willingly passed itself to another. To Threx, this was nothing short of a resurrection. Dr. Voss worked with the focus of a sculptor crafting eternity. When the new heart began to beat within its new home, the entire room sighed as one. Threx felt something that Yield Theory language had no word for, a trembling admiration that bordered on worship. They understood now. Humans were not terrified by the fragility of life because they had learned to share it. The memory of blood that night. Threx stood in the hospital corridor, watching the rain trace patterns down the windows. Ilara approached quietly beside them. "You've been quiet," she said. "I am conflicted," Threx replied. "My people believe blood is sacred because it marks the boundary of life. But you humans cross that boundary daily, without reverence or fear." Ilara shook her head. "Oh, we have reverence. Every time I cut, I remember what's at stake. We just learned that love demands risk. If you fear too much to act, nothing is ever saved." Threx looked at her, eyes glimmering. "You speak as if death is an equal, not an enemy." She smiled faintly. "Maybe that's the secret. Death's inevitable, but fear isn't, and that's where we win." The alien recorded those words carefully. They would become the most quoted sentence in the report that would one day change to civilizations. Transmission denied. When Threx finally sent their full findings to the Yield Theory Council, The message was intercepted and censored. The official response came swiftly. Your conclusions violate our biological doctrine. Humanity's relationship with mortality is not evolution, it is perversion. You are hereby recalled for psychological decontamination. The words hit Threx like a blade. Decontamination was a polite term for memory erasure. Everything they had seen, every moment of awe and discovery gone. Dr. Voss noticed Threx's agitation when they next met. They didn't like your report. They rejected it. They intend to cleanse my mind. She exhaled slowly. So they fear what they don't understand. Yes, Threx murmured, and that fear will be their cage, a dangerous choice. The next morning Threx made a decision that no Yilthari had ever made before. They sent an encrypted message, not to their own kind but to humanity. Inside it were centuries of alien knowledge, technology, medicine, the biological archives of their species, all gifted to Earth. At the end of the transmission, one line stood alone. You taught us that to heal is not to flee from fear, but to open oneself to it. May this gift carry your courage across the stars. Then Threx vanished. The Council reported their disappearance as defection. Humanity remembered it as friendship. And somewhere beyond the Milky Way, a lone Yilthari drifted in a small vessel, heartbeat steady, watching the blue planet fade into a spark of light. For the first time in their species' history, one of them truly understood the meaning of blood, not as terror, but as connection. Space was silent, but Threx could hear it, the faint pulse of existence that connected all living things. To the Yilthari, space had always been sterile, untouched, free of the chaos of organic life. Yet as Threx drifted in their small vessel between stars, they began to sense something that could only be described in human terms. Heartbeat. Every flicker of starlight felt alive. Every current of radiation hummed like the rhythm of blood through unseen veins. It was as if the universe itself was breathing. Threx thought of Earth, its blue oceans, its stubbornly curious people, its surgeons who cut open hearts not to kill, but to heal. Humanity had infected Threx with something far more powerful than any pathogen: empathy. The gift of defiance, the encrypted transmission Threx had sent to Earth, had not gone unnoticed. Within weeks, the Yilthari Council detected it. Panic spread through their ranks like wildfire. To them, knowledge was sacred and restricted. Sharing it with another species, especially one as unstable as humanity, was an unforgivable breach. But Earth did not use the gift for conquest. Instead, Dr. Alara Voss and her research teams spent sleepless nights decoding the alien biological data. The result was astonishing. Regenerative tissue techniques far beyond human medicine. A year later, the world's first synthetic heart that could grow and heal itself was implanted into a patient. It pulsed with alien-inspired precision, half human, half Yilthari in design. When the heart began to beat on its own, Dr. Voss whispered, "Thank you, Threx." The event was broadcast across the planet. Humanity's response wasn't triumph, it was awe. For the first time they realized that their courage had inspired another species to evolve. Rebellion in the stars. Back on Yulthar Prime, Threx's defection had become a myth whispered in secret chambers. Young scientists, dreamers, and healers began to question their own teachings. If fear keeps us alive, one student argued, why does it keep us from learning? Perhaps humanity is not dangerous, another said quietly. Perhaps they are free. The council grew uneasy. The word Threxian became a forbidden term, synonymous with heresy and curiosity. But ideas, once born, cannot be unlearned. In hidden laboratories, Yilthari researchers began replicating the human act of surgery on synthetic models, at first, then on biological specimens. Each time they cut, they fought the instinct to recoil. Each time they succeeded, they redefined what it meant to heal. Fear was no longer a god, it was a teacher. The transmission returns one night while orbiting the desolate moon of a forgotten system. Threx's ship intercepted an unexpected signal. It was weak, distorted, and traveling faster than Yilthari communication norms allowed. They decoded it slowly, pulse racing, to Threx. "This is Alara Voss. If you're still out there, we made it work. The heart, your data saved thousands. We hope you're safe. Wherever you are, you're not forgotten." For a long time, Threx could not move. In the silence of the void, they pressed one hand against their chest and felt the faint rhythm beneath their translucent skin. Not a true heartbeat. Yilthari did not possess such organs, but something similar. A resonance. They whispered, "You gave us life, too." Blood across the stars. Years passed. The Yilthari finally found Threx's abandoned research vessel drifting near the galactic rim. Inside were thousands of notes, recordings, and visual logs of Earth's surgeries, hospitals, and blood donation centers. The Council initially sought to destroy them, But the movement among young scientists had grown too large. They demanded access to the forbidden archive. Eventually, the council relented, partly from fear, partly from inevitability, and as they watched humanity's images, the entire chamber fell silent. There was a clip of Dr. Voss's hands opening a chest cavity, another of a child receiving a transfusion, a soldier carrying the wounded through fire. To the Yield Three it was unbearable and beautiful. Finally, the High Elder whose people had once fled from the sight of blood spoke in a trembling voice. Perhaps fear was never meant to rule us, but to remind us what courage is for. The New Dawn. On a distant morning years later, the first joint human Year 3 medical ship launched into the void. Its name, chosen by Dr. Voss herself, was the Red Hope. Inside its halls, humans and Year 3 worked side by side. Surgeons taught aliens how to steady their trembling hands. Year 3 healers taught humans how to perceive pain through resonance. Together they discovered cures neither could have achieved alone. When the first operation between species succeeded a Year 3 life saved by human hands, the crew wept. For in that moment, blood was no longer a symbol of fear. It was a bridge between worlds. And though Threx was never found, a small inscription was carved into the ship's core. They assumed humans feared blood until they saw surgeons calmly cut open a beating heart and save a life. Generations passed. Humanity and the Yield theory grew together like two halves of a single heartbeat. The old fears had not vanished, they had evolved. In every classroom, in every healing ward orbiting the twin suns of the outer colonies, students learned the story of the first alien who defied instinct, and the surgeon who showed the universe what courage truly meant. The story was no longer science, it was scripture. And at the center of it all was a single name, Threx, the Hall of Living Hearts on Earth. Deep beneath the rebuilt city of Geneva stood the Hall of Living Hearts, a vast museum and medical archive co-founded by humans and Wyathari alike. Inside transparent chambers, suspended in nutrient fields, beat 1,000 living hearts grown from human and Yield 3 DNA. Each one pulsed to a slightly different rhythm, creating a symphony of life that filled the halls with sound, a reminder that courage had a pulse of its own. Every year, young doctors from both species gathered there to take the oath of the healer. Inspired by the ancient words once spoken by Dr. L.R. Voss, we open the body not to harm, but to understand. We face fear not to destroy it, but to learn its shape. And we save life not because it is easy, but because it is sacred. Many of them would lay their hands upon the central heart, the one grown from Threx's preserved cells, and feel it beating beneath their palms. Some swore it vibrated in recognition, as though it remembered them all. Echoes in the void meanwhile, far beyond the rim of known space. Explorers aboard the Red Hope received a faint repeating signal. It was ancient, centuries old, but unmistakably Yeatheri in origin. The transmission was fragmented by radiation storms, yet a pattern emerged, a heartbeat, followed by a whisper. Fear is the shadow of love. Only those who face one will find the other. The scientists aboard the ship froze. The voice was unmistakable. It was For years, the signal came and went, sometimes strong, sometimes fading to nothing. Some claimed Threx was alive, having transcended their physical form. Others believed it was a message encoded into the fabric of space-time itself, a final gift, still traveling outward, still teaching. Dr. Voss was long gone by then, her ashes scattered among the stars, but the generation that followed her had inherited her defiance, her warmth, her calmness before the storm. To them Threx was not just a name, Threx was the moment an alien learned what it meant to be human. The Red Ceremony centuries later, on the anniversary of humanity's first interstellar alliance, representatives from dozens of worlds gathered on a floating station orbiting a red giant. The station's central dome shimmered with holographic constellations showing every known civilization that had joined the coalition of life. At the heart of the ceremony stood a small sculpture, two hands intertwined, one human, one Yield 3 between them. A glowing crystal pulsed like a living heart. The High Curator began to speak. Once blood was a symbol of fear. Now, it is the thread that binds our species together. Because one alien dared to stay when instinct told them to flee, and one human dared to teach compassion through the edge of a blade. As the crowd bowed their heads, the great heart in the center of the dome began to beat in rhythm with theirs. For a few seconds, every species, present humans, Yeatheri, and others beyond, felt it. One synchronized pulse echoing across the stars. No words, no translation needed. Just the shared rhythm of existence. The eternal pulse millennia later, long after cities had turned to dust and stars themselves had dimmed. A probe drifted silently through the intergalactic dark. Inside it was a recording. still playing after countless eons, a heartbeat followed by two voices. Elara Voss, we fight death, Threx, and in fighting we learn to live. The sound faded, yet the vibration lingered an echo in the endless void. Somewhere, somehow, perhaps another race would hear it one day and misunderstand it at first, as the Yilthri once did. They would think it was the sound of fear, until they listened closer, and realized it was the sound of hope. Epilogue. The final report of Threx. They assumed humans feared blood until they saw surgeons calmly cut open a beating heart and save a life. But fear was never the lesson. The lesson was love, willing to face the wound, to open itself to pain, and through that courage, to create healing. Wherever life exists, this truth remains. The bravest hearts are the ones that keep beating.